So I'm going to start on this slide. I think we talked a little bit about this. So here in this chapter, we've been talking about natural selection, and this chapter is going to kind of lead into the evidence for evolution. So in this example, this is an example how natural selection can mold evolution or can lead to evolution. So this bacteria, it's called Staphylococcus aureus. In chapter 3, you guys learned the shapes of bacteria, coccus, bacillus. So coccus means they're round, staphylo means they're grape-like clusters. Staphylococcus aureus, I don't know if you guys heard about MRSA, that's methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, and it's very, very, I think, dangerous. So there's a bacteria that's called Staphylococcus epidermis. Do you guys know what epidermis stands for?
Top layer skin.
So your top layer of skin. So that Staphylococcus epidermis lives on your skin, and it's been living there for hundreds of years, and it's in a mutualistic or symbiotic relationship with our body. So if you were to get a cut, and the Staphylococcus epidermis gets inside the cut, it's not going to cause an infection because it's in a symbiotic relationship. Whereas if something from the dirt or Staphylococcus aureus gets in that cut, it's going to cause an infection. So Scott, I think you need to mute. I'm going to mute you, okay? So Staphylococcus aureus, if you get an infection and you take antibiotics for it, sometimes what happens, there can be a bacteria that can arise that is resistant to those antibiotics. And I think I told you last time, these bacteria can multiply very quickly. They can reproduce in 20 minutes. So the antibiotics can kill all the bacteria except the one that is resistant. And then you're going to have more bacteria that's resistant because this is going to be able to reproduce, live longer and reproduce. So I'm not saying that antibiotics are causing these mutations. What antibiotics are doing, it's causing basically a shift in the alleles. So frequency to shift. That means the alleles shifted towards more of resistant bacteria. So that's one of the reasons doctors tell you to finish the course for the antibiotics. And if you're taking antibiotics, something maybe for a viral infection, you should be taking antivirals for that. But if you end up taking antibiotics for that, it's going to cause a mutation, not a mutation, but it's going to cause a shift in allele, whereas it's going to become more resistant. And then pharmaceutical companies have to, develop another drug for that. So this is happening a lot. They have to do a lot of research. They have to, keep producing new drugs. And especially for diseases that are STDs like syphilis or gonorrhea. So if those mutate and they become resistant, you have to come up with the new antibiotics for those. And syphilis, it can even, it can cause dementia. It can get to your brain and cause dementia as well. So it's very expensive for the pharmaceutical companies. And also there's a lot of research that's needed. And the reason I'm telling you all this is because you guys have the right to choose when you get your ballots for voting. I encourage my students to vote for the science research more, because our human species kind of depend on this. For example, if there was nothing that could fight one of these diseases, then we might all end up going extinct. So it's very important that there's some research that needs to be done on these some of these diseases, and it's continuous. And I think nowadays it's getting defended a lot. So that's one of the reasons I wanted to bring this up. I think we already worked on these questions, so I'm going to move on here. These are called peppered moth. Peppered moth. This is very, very common example that's been used for natural selection. So the title of the slide is that natural selection eliminates poorly adapted phenotypes. You guys already know what phenotypes are. Phenotypes are the traits. In this case, we're talking about the color of peppered moth. So in Europe, this was the color of the trees. They were light in color. And there was a moth, peppered moth, that was a peppered color. And this is black color. For predators, this was more easily detected, and these got eaten more often compared to these because they were easily seen. So in the environment is favoring this color. But then industrial revolution happened. All that smoke got to the trees from burning coal. And this is the background now for the trees. Now, this one is easily detected compared to this. This is more camouflaging with the background. So environment changed. So as the environmental conditions change, the phenotypes that were favored are not favored any longer. So adaptations that seem perfect, this one seems perfect here with the tree, with a light color, it's completely, not perfect here, or it's not well adapted here because they're easily detected. So the environmental conditions can change. It can favor one allele and or one characteristic, and then it won't favor that any longer if something happens or it changes. Here is another example. This is something that's called coevolution. Coevolution. This is another term I want you guys to know, coevolution. Here is an orchid. This is orchid flower, and this is wasp or hornet. Maybe you guys know it as hornet. So this wasp is pollinating these orchid flowers, and coevolution means they are intertwined with each other. They are dependent on each other. They're evolving together, just like epidermis on your skin. So they're dependent on each other. They're evolving together. I want you to notice the shape of this flower. It looks like a female wasp. So it looks like a female wasp, and this male wasp mistakes it for a female wasp, comes in, and the head kind of fits perfectly there. And when I think I have another slide here. So here, this animation comes in, it hits the head right here, and it grabs. So basically, it's best suited for pollination. Gets some of those seeds, and then goes to the next flower. Same thing, grabs on to that and pollinates that plant or that flower. So these are this is an example of coevolution. So orchid doesn't evolve in order to be better pollinated by the wasp. Neither the orchid nor the natural selection has a foresight. So if this changes, or one of these changes, the other one might not evolve. So they are codependent on each other. That's what I'm trying to say. So they have evolved alongside one another for long enough that no other animal can pollinate this flower. This flower is completely dependent on this wasp for pollination. So they're codependent on each other. So orchids are best suited to wasp pollination, or the most likely to reproduce. So if they have exact same, maybe very similar looking female wasp flower, they are more likely to reproduce. So their alleles get passed to the next generation most often. So that's coevolution. They're codependent on each other. So fitness. Survival is not enough for evolutionary fitness. There has to be reproduction. If you cannot reproduce, doesn't matter how healthy you are, you cannot pass on your genes. So you have to be able to reproduce. That reproduction is your genetic contribution to your next generation. You're giving your genes, if you have good genes, to your next generation. And then we talked about gene pool. Do you guys remember what gene pool is?
It's an entire collection of genes and alleles.
So it's a collection of genes. So I'm gonna just say that this is a gene pool. There are some alleles, that's big D, big D. There are some alleles that are heterozygous, some little d, little d. These alleles can shift over time. So scientists test evolution against a null hypothesis. The null hypothesis is that allele frequencies do not change. So for example, there is 25%, that's big D, big D. 50% big D, little d, 25%. Oh, and you watch this population for 10 generations and nothing has changed. They're still at 25, 50, and 25%. That means there's no evolution, no change in allele frequencies. That means that population is not evolving, it's stable. If these Leo frequencies are changing, maybe after 5 generations now, it's 75% big D and 25% little d, maybe this one completely gone away for whatever reason, then there is evolution happening. So no change in allele frequencies means no evolution. And there's something called Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. So this is when the allele frequencies do not change. So if it's, if it's following Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium, that means the allele frequencies do not change. For that to happen, there has to be some conditions. So the conditions for this Hardy-Weinberg means there's no natural selection that's happening. There's no mutations, and the population is large enough where random changes do not affect the population or the allele frequencies. Individuals mate at random. This is not true for humans at all. We pick our mates. No migration. There's nothing, no new alleles that are coming in. This, this never really happens. Maybe there might be one plant population that might follow all these. So there is, there is mutations that happen because mutations are random, or sometimes there's migration. Individuals, maybe for plants, they're mating at random, but not for humans, or maybe not even some animals. So this doesn't always happen. So the only thing I want you to know, I want you to know the purpose. I want you to know the purpose of Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. The purpose is to figure out if gene frequencies change over time, because if they change, we can say there's evolution happening, and if they do not change, we can say the population is stable. So to answer the question, is this population undergoing evolution or not? We're going to use Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. It's an actual equation, and I'm not going to have you guys, your book mentions it. I think your virtual lab might also mention it, but I'm not going to have you memorize that. I'm not going to give you any questions regarding that. I will ask you the purpose of Hardy-Weinberg though, so make sure you know that. So Hardy-Weinberg is a useful model for converting known allele frequencies to genotype frequencies or vice versa. But in real populations, these 5 assumptions, they're always violated. There's always something that's happening, so it never really follows that. So that means we can say there is allele frequencies that are changing that's going to lead to evolution. So again, the purpose of this to figure out if the population is undergoing evolution, if allele frequencies are changing, or if they're staying stable.